Perfect. So let's get started, folks, with the first passage that we're going to discuss today. Now, before we begin, just remember one thing. I say this every time we begin discussing an RC, right? One very important element of reading is to read with a lot of interest and curiosity, right? No matter what the topic is, irrespective of the topic, right? Tell your mind that you should read with interest and curiosity, right? And a lot of energy, and believe me, that will help in comprehension. Okay, right? So just tell your mind that, right? It's sort of like a trick which will really help you to understand this passage better. Get immersed in the passage, right? So read it with a lot of curiosity, read it with a lot of interest, and be an active reader, right? So show some energy when you're reading this, when you're reading passage, and follow this for all reading materials, irrespective of what you're reading. It will really help you to understand what you're reading, right? Because you're becoming an active reader. If you're a passive reader and you're like, oh, this topic is boring, it's too lengthy, I don't understand certain words and all of that, then it's going to affect your comprehension. Okay, so interest, curiosity, and energy, right? So let's sort of exhibit that, and let's start reading this passage. So we'll read it together. You have a link as well in the description. You can click on the link and see the passage there as well. All right. Okay, now let's go through it. So again, ignore the title. This title, CAT passages, by the way, in your exam, you'll never have a title of the passage, right? This is just there as a placeholder. So ignore the title. Don't let the title bias you about the content. The title is not important here. You won't have a title in the exam. Okay, what does it say? Few realize that the government of China, governing an empire of some 60 million people during the Tang dynasty, implemented a complex financial system that recognized grains, coins, and textiles as money. Interesting. So what does it say? So it says government of China implemented a financial system that recognized grains, coins, and textiles as money, right? So this is pretty interesting, right? Just to sort of give you an idea, and of course the time frame is also mentioned. This is way back in time. So that's why they were using not only coins, but grains and textiles as money as well, right? So quite interesting. Coins did have certain advantages, okay? So it's starting with coins out of the three. They were durable, recognizable, and provided a convenient medium of exchange, especially for smaller transactions. Okay, so it talks about the advantages of coins. Great. However, there were also disadvantages. Now see, this is a trigger word, by the way. Whenever you see however, right, what will typically happen in a passage is however will tell you something opposite to what has been mentioned before, right? So it's talking about advantages. However is a trigger word that will tell you that most likely he's going to talk about opposite of advantages, which is disadvantages, right? So remember that trigger word. However, there were also disadvantages, okay? A continuing shortage of copper meant that government mints could not produce enough coins for the entire empire, to the extent that for most of the dynasty's history, coins constituted only a tenth of the money supply. Okay, so there was a supply issue with coins, is what it's saying, right? The government wasn't able to mint enough money because of a shortage of copper, and that's why there was a problem in supply. So this was the disadvantage at that time of having coins. Okay, all right. One of the main objections to calls for taxes to be paid in coin was that peasant producers who could weave cloth or grow grain, okay, the other two major currencies of the Tang, would not be able to produce coins and therefore would not be able to pay their taxes. Okay, now this sentence here can be a little confusing. Okay, so what it says is that there was an objection. So we're talking about disadvantages of coins, right? Remember, sort of maintain that flow. So this is another disadvantage. The government was asking for taxes to be paid in coins. And the objection that peasant producers had was the producers who were weaving cloth or grow grain, they were not able to produce coins, obviously, right? These producers were weaving cloth and growing grain, so they preferred to pay the taxes in cloth and grain. They were not able to produce coins and therefore were not able to pay their taxes. That was the objection from peasant producers towards the government asking to pay taxes in coins. Okay, so again, a disadvantage of coins, right? So look at this paragraph. Now what we do is, whenever we read this passage, right, we always go paragraph by paragraph and we try to figure out the main idea of this paragraph. Okay, so what is the main idea of this paragraph here? We've read it. Okay, so you know that, okay, it starts by saying there was a financial system that the government of China had, which had grains, coins, and textiles, and then it starts talking about coins. So it talks about the advantages of coins and it talks about the disadvantages of coins. So if you think about it, of course, there is an intro, which will typically be there for every passage. But the main idea here is there is advantages and disadvantages of coins that have been discussed in this paragraph, right? So you can make a small note like this and you can follow the strategy in the exam as well. You have your the flip book that's given to you, the notepad. So you can always take small notes. The advantage of taking quick notes is it also helps in comprehension, right? So the moment you write something down, okay, the moment you write something down, it sort of helps you in comprehension. It registers in your brain. That's why we take small notes. Again, these notes have to be quick. You don't have to write full sentences. Okay, it's primarily for you to sort of comprehend and not lose the flow of the passage. A lot of times I hear students saying, oh, I'm reading a passage. I start with a lot of like concentration, but in the middle of the passage, I lose concentration, I lose the connect. So if you take notes for every paragraph, it will help you to not lose the flow of the passage. Okay, all right. So yeah, so that is advantages and disadvantages of coins that have been discussed, and there are many advantages and disadvantages. Just keep that in mind. Let's proceed. As coins had advantages and disadvantages, okay, great. This was discussed in the previous paragraph. So the second paragraph obviously is connecting to the previous paragraph. So as coins had disadvantages and advantages, so did textiles. So now it's gone to talking about textiles. Remember, it spoke about coins, textiles, and grains, right, as three forms of currency. It spoke about coins. Looks like now it's going to textiles. Okay. Now, what were the textiles advantages and disadvantages? That's what it's talking about. If in circulation for a long period of time, they could show signs of wear and tear. Okay. So looks like it's talking about the disadvantage of textile. Just give me a second. 1 second, folks. Sorry about this. For some reason, the temperature it's gotten a bit hot in my room. I don't know for what reason, but anyway, sorry for the interruption. Let's proceed. Okay, so as coins had advantages and disadvantages, so did textiles. So we're talking about now textiles now. If in circulation for a long period of time, they could show signs of wear and tear. All right, so textiles obviously is cloth. If it's in circulation for a long time, it will show signs of wear and tear. That makes sense. Stained, faded, and torn bolts of textiles had less value than a brand new bolt. Okay, so textiles, if they're stained, faded, and torn, what it's saying is that it will have less value. It's a currency, remember, than a brand new bolt, and that's a problem, because it shows signs of wear and tear. Furthermore, a full bolt had a particular value. Okay, if consumers cut textiles into smaller pieces to buy or sell something worth less than a full bolt, that too greatly lessened the value of the textiles. Okay, now let's focus on the sentence. What does it say? Furthermore, a full bolt had a particular value. Now see, chances are that you might not know what bolt is. Okay, don't worry. See, everybody will see certain words in the passages, right, where you might not be familiar with words, because it's not possible to be familiar with like 100% familiar with all the words, right? That's not possible. So if you get an odd word which you're not familiar with, don't let that throw you off, right? What you should do is you should try to understand this word with the context. And this is very simple to understand. What does it say? Furthermore, a full bolt had a particular value. If consumers cut textiles, that greatly lessened the value of the textiles. So you can understand using the context. And when I say context, I mean like the sentences around that word. Okay. So if you look at this sentence, you can understand that bolt is most likely a unit of measurement. Okay. Because they talk about like it has a particular value. If you cut it, the value gets lessened. So it is something to do with a unit of measurement. Okay. So you can understand that from context. You don't need to know the meaning beforehand. Right. Okay. So it says that if they cut it, it will lessen the value of the textiles. Unlike coins, textiles could not be used for small transactions. As an official noted, textiles could not be exchanged by the foot and the inch. Okay. So again, this whole paragraph talks about the disadvantages of textiles, right? First we had coins, then it says textiles, and then it talks about the disadvantages. So wear and tear, Then it talks about you cut it, the value lessens, and also unlike coins, you can't use it for small transactions. So coins, you can use it for small transactions. Textiles, you can't. These were the disadvantages or the limitations of textiles. Right? Okay. I hope you're with me till now. So remember what we've discussed till now. We've discussed three currencies, then we've discussed advantages and disadvantages of coins, and now we've discussed disadvantages of textiles. Okay, all right, let's move on. But textiles had some advantages. Okay, great. So simple structure, right? It's talking about disadvantages. Now it's talking about textiles, advantages of textiles over coins. So there is a comparison with coins. For a start, textile production was widespread, okay, and there were fewer problems with the supply of textiles. Okay. Now, if you remember from the previous paragraph, coins had a supply issue because copper was limited. What it's saying is that textile didn't have that issue, right? Because the production was widespread. For large transactions, textiles weighed less than their equivalent in coins, since a string of coins could weigh as much as 4 kg. Okay, so what is it saying? Again, remember, it's comparing textiles with coins. That's what the paragraph is doing. Okay. So first it says the supply issue is not there with textiles, and for large transactions, textiles is a better fit because coins, again, think about it, right? Coins for large transactions will weigh a lot. It says it would weigh as much as 4 kg for a large transactions. Textiles would weigh much less than coins. So looks like it's saying that textiles is more suited for large transactions. Furthermore, the dimensions of a bolt of silk held remarkably steady from the 3rd to the 10th century. Okay, so it's talking about dimensions of a bolt of silk. Remember, bolt is a unit of measurement. So it remained steady from the 3rd to 10th century, 56 centimeters wide and 12 meters long. Okay, so the dimensions stayed steady is what it's saying. The values of different textiles were also more stable than the fluctuating values of coins. Okay, so several advantages of textiles have been listed here. Okay, if you want to take a quick note, you can even summarize the advantages if you want, right? So supply is an advantage, right? Weight is an advantage. And then it says that it was stable in terms of dimensions, and it was also steady in terms of value, right? So if you want, you can take a quick note about the different advantages of textiles as well, right? Okay, now one thing that I want to discuss here, folks, is, and remember this, that reading comprehension, typically what happens is that you face difficulties in reading comprehension. One of the major reasons is that you're not familiar with the construction of a sentence. Okay, different authors have different writing styles. Some of them use either complex constructions or constructions that are not very common. And if you're not familiar with that construction, it will sort of, you'll have difficulty in understanding those sentences, right? So one thing to note here is, so for instance, if you look at this sentence, right? Just a simple tip here. It uses this colon. Okay, you see that? So what happens typically in a colon is, and let's read this sentence. It says, furthermore, the dimensions of a bolt of silk held remarkably steady from I'll read it again. Furthermore, the dimensions of a bolt of silk held remarkably steady from the 3rd to the 10th century. Okay. Then there's a colon, and it says 56 centimeters wide and 12 meters long. Now, what is the use of the colon there? Think about it for a minute. Why do you have a colon there? Okay. The colon is there simply because, sorry, just give me 1 second. I'm having problems with my headphone. So sorry about it. Just think about the colon. I'll get back to you. Yeah, these headphones are not the best headphones, so I often have those issues with it. Sorry about that. Okay, so yeah, so let's look at the colon. So what it says, it says whenever you have a colon, right? See, this 56 centimeter wide and 12 meter long is just illustrating the previous part. So whatever is there before the colon is being illustrated by what is there after the colon. So they're connected. So usually with a colon, right? And this is a colon, right? Usually with a colon, you will see that. The right hand side of the colon will usually illustrate what is mentioned on the left hand side of the colon, right? So it's just giving you additional details, or it's giving you an example. So here it's talking about dimensions, and then it's giving you the exact dimension after the colon. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Great. So what have we discussed so far? We've discussed about the three currencies, advantages and disadvantages of coins, and we've discussed advantages and disadvantages of textiles as well. Okay, let's proceed. All right. The government also required the use of textiles for large transactions. So it's continuing to discuss about textiles. Remember, we had coins, textiles, and grains. Okay, so it's continuing to discuss about textiles. It says government has required the use of textiles for large transactions. Coins, on the other hand, were better suited for small transactions. And this is a repeat of a previous point, right? So coins are great for smaller transactions, but government required the use of textiles for large transactions. And possibly given the costs of transporting coins for a more local usage. So what does it say? Coins were suited for smaller transactions, okay? And also possibly given the costs of transporting coins for a more local usage. So it's talking about the cost of transporting coins. So considering the cost of the transporting coins, they were more suited for a local usage. So basically what we can infer is that transporting coins was most likely expensive. Right? So because it was expensive, they couldn't move around the coins to sort of like further areas. That's why they restricted the usage to local. Okay, because the transportation of coins was expensive. That's what it's trying to say. Then it starts talking about grain, which is the third currency. Grain, because it rotted easily, was not used nearly as much as coins and textiles. Okay, so grain, the usage was less because it used to rot easily, which makes sense. But taxpayers were required to pay grain to the government as a share of their annual tax obligations, and official salaries were expressed in weights of grain. Interesting. Now imagine a world where your salary that your company gives you comes in the equivalent of grain. That's a funny sort of like thought right now, right? But this was way back in the day where the official salaries were actually expressed in weights of grain. Okay, so what is this paragraph talking about? Now you need to summarize. Let's say if you want to summarize the main idea on a note, right? So of course it talks about textiles and coins, right? How coins were better suited for small transactions, but the main idea is focused on grain. Okay, so it talks about the disadvantage, which is it rotted easily. Okay, and then it also talks about that in spite of that, a part of tax was paid in grain, and official salaries were also paid in grain. Okay, so that's the main idea of the paragraph, mostly about grain, the disadvantage, and what, not really an advantage, but in spite of the disadvantage, you know, what used to happen. So a portion of tax and official salaries. All right, that's the point in the paragraph. Now let's look at the last paragraph. In actuality, our own currency system today has some similarities, even as it is changing in front of our eyes. Okay, so now it's drawing a similarity with our own currency system, which is a bit difficult to believe, right? I mean, think about it. They were paying in grains and textiles and stuff. So how can we draw similarities, right? So one similarity that you can think of is coins. We still use coins, right? So what the author is saying is that our own currency system has some similarities, even as we see it changing in front of our eyes. Our currency system is changing. We have cash. Okay, we definitely have cash. So coins for small transactions like paying for parking at a meter, and banknotes for other items. Okay, so now we have cash and we have a hyphen here. So what it's doing is we have cash. Okay, and read it with the punctuations. So if there is a comma, pause when you're reading. If there is a full stop, pause. It just helps you in comprehension. So similarly, what the hyphen here is doing is it says we have cash, and then it gives you examples of cash, right? So we have coins for small transactions and banknotes. Both are examples of cash. That's why you have an hyphen there. Okay. Checks and debit credit cards for other, often larger types of payments. So cash for smaller transactions, and checks and debit credit cards for larger types of payments. At the same time, we are shifting to electronic banking and making payments online. Some young people never use cash and do not know how to write a check. Okay, interesting. So what's the main idea of this paragraph? Think about it. It's basically drawing similarity between the Tang system, remember it was from the Tang dynasty, and the current system. So it's talking about two currency systems, and it's drawing similarities, right, between what used to happen in Tang and what used to happen in current system. So this definitely talks about the current system while drawing a comparison with the Tang Dynasty system. Okay, all right. So I'll take your questions in a bit. I'm sure you have some questions. I'm not checking chat. I'll come down to it. But folks, this was the passage, right? We've taken some notes. Let's try to, we've understood like paragraph by paragraph, and hopefully we maintained the flow as well. If I were to ask you what's the main idea of this passage, right? So think about it. The main idea of this passage is talking about the three different currencies which were used in the Tang Dynasty, right? It talks about coins, it talks about textiles, it talks about grains. And then in the last paragraph, it draws a similarity. But the main sort of idea here is it sort of discusses the currency system which was there way back in the Tang Dynasty in the form of coins, textiles, and grain. That's the main idea of the passage. Let's move on. So we've understood the passage. Hopefully, you guys are okay with that. And so let's do question 1. In the context of the passage, which one of the following can be inferred with regard to the use of currency during the Tang era? Okay, now remember, read the question very slowly. Which of the following can be inferred with regard to the use of currency during the Tang era? Now, inference, remember, means that you have to basically understand, based on the information available in the passage, what can you understand? So what you're trying to do in an inference is, you look at a passage and you draw understanding based on the information given in the passage. That's an inference. So inferences, remember, can be explicitly stated, or inferences are something that you'll have to read between the lines. It can be both. Okay, so that's what you have to do. Now, with regard to the use of currency during the Tang era, what can you infer? Look at the 4 options. Please look at all the 4 options and then let me know what you think is the correct answer, and then we'll discuss it. So I'm getting answers now. I'm getting a lot of alphas. Okay. And I've gotten a Charlie as well, which is C. Okay, so there's a delta as well. Let's discuss this. Okay. Okay, now what can you infer with regard to the use of currency during the Tang era? Let's look at all the options. Currency usage was similar to that of modern times. Okay, there's definitely a mention of that, right? In the last paragraph, they draw similarity between that currency system of Tang era to the modern system. So can you draw this inference that currency usage was similar to that of modern times? You can. Okay, so let's hold on to this. This is potentially the correct option, but let's see if we have a better option. Remember, you have to choose the best possible option. Okay, so look at all the options. Currency that deteriorated easily was not used for official work. This is not true, and you can go back and check the passage in the link. Official salaries were paid in grain, and grain was easily deteriorated. Okay, so this you can't infer because this is wrong. You can't infer this because it clearly says that grain was used and grain was deteriorated easily. So that's gone. Copper coins were more valuable and durable than textiles. Okay, interesting point. Since a lot of you have chosen, just give me a minute. Copper coins were more valuable and durable than textiles. Okay, so we have 2 points, valuable and durable. Okay. Does it say it would more durable? There is a point which says that, right? When they're comparing textiles with coins, and you can see the passage, it does talk about the fact that textiles used to show wear and tear. Okay, so they were not durable, whereas coins were durable. Okay, so that is there. Does it say coins were more valuable than textiles? It doesn't say that. Okay, there is nowhere in the passage where it indicates that copper coins were more valuable than textiles. In fact, it said copper coins for smaller transactions, textiles for larger transactions. But it never said that copper coins were more valuable. Okay, so be careful of these options. You will see durable and you'll be like, oh, you know, this seems true. But then there's also an element about valuable, which is not true. So you can't draw this inference. Okay, so this is gone. Grains were the most used currency because of government requirements. Is that something that you can infer? Right? It just says that a part of tax was paid in grains and official salaries were paid in grains. It never says that it was the most used currency because of government requirements. So we have ruled out 3 options. The correct option is indeed A. Okay. All right. This should be clear. Let's go to question 2. But of course, if you have questions about this, I can answer it later. Let's move on. Question number 2. According to the passage, the modern currency system, okay, shares all the following features with that of Tang except. Please understand this question. What is it saying? It's talking about the similarity between modern currency and the Tang system. Again, the last paragraph. Okay. but it's saying except. So basically what this means is that out of 4 options that are given to you, 3 will be the similarities, okay, between Tang and the modern currency system, and 1 will not be a similarity. And that one will be the correct option because it says except. So you have to choose an option which is not a similarity between modern currency system and Tang according to the passage. Okay, so understand that question and tell me what the correct answer is. Okay, I'm getting a lot of deltas and bravos. Okay, so let's see, we have bravos and deltas. Okay, all right. Okay, bravos and deltas. Okay, great. Now, one thing which is very good here is that you guys are on the right track. So well done on that. Okay, clearly, whoever said bravo and delta, you guys are on the right track. Bravo and delta is quite close. Okay, it's very close. This is actually a very tricky question, and I'll explain to you why. Okay, let's spend a little bit of time here. This is one of those questions in CAT. Okay, one of the trickiest questions, I would say, arguably one of the trickiest questions in verbal ability in RC that appeared in CAT 2020, and you'll understand why. Okay, let's try to understand this. It's talking about similarity of modern currency system and Tang. Okay, so before we go to Bravo and Delta, let's quickly talk about Alpha and Charlie. It uses different materials as currency. Is this a similarity? Clearly it is, right? We had grains, textiles, and coins, and in the modern system, we have banknotes, coins, debit cards, credit cards. So this is a similarity. Remember, we're looking for except, so this is not our answer. Don't get confused. Let's look at Charlie. It uses different currencies for different situations. That's true. In the Tang dynasty, coins were used for large transactions, textiles were used for, coins for small transactions, textiles for large transactions. In the modern day, also we have cash, which is being used for small transactions, and credit debit card for large transactions. You can go back to the last paragraph, you'll know this, that this is correct. Okay, so both these options are gone, elimination. Now we're left with Bravo and Delta. Okay, let's understand this. Let's go to Delta first. It is undergoing transformation. Is this a similarity between the Tang system and the modern system? Okay, let's understand this. The last paragraph, if you look at it, it says, in actuality, our own currency system today has some similarities, even as it is changing in front of our eyes. So it talks about the modern system which is changing in front of our eyes. So it's undergoing a transformation. It definitely talks about that the modern system, the system today, is changing in front of our eyes. That is true. Does it say anywhere in the passage that the Tang system also underwent a transformation? Does it say that? We have to look for a similarity, right? Okay. We have to understand whether it's a similarity or not. We know that the modern system went through a transformation, or it's going through a transformation right now. We can see that. Is there anywhere it mentions that Tang system went through a transformation? It doesn't mention that. Okay, so this is a possible answer because of this reason. So let's hold on to this. Now let's look at Bravo. Okay, and this is where it gets really confusing. It says its currencies fluctuate in value over time. Now, is this a similarity that's been expressed for both Tang and modern? Let's try to understand it. See, for Tang, it does talk about currency fluctuation, right? So let's look at that. Let's go back. I'll clear these notes. See, it says, if you look at this sentence, it talks about when you cut textiles, that to greatly lessen the value of textiles. And then it says stained, faded and torn bolts of textiles had less value than brand new bolt. Look at this sentence. So basically what happened was, as the textiles grew older, okay, and they showed wear and tear, the value lessened. So that was fluctuation. That was fluctuation in this particular currency. So the fluctuation happened in Tang, that is mentioned in the paragraph. Where does it say that the fluctuation happened for the modern system as well? If you read this passage, or if you read this paragraph, the last one, the point is not directly mentioned that that modern currency also goes through fluctuation. It doesn't mention that. Okay, so now this is a problem, right? Because you're stuck with B and D. both seem correct, because Bravo doesn't talk about the fluctuation in modern times. Delta, there is no transformation in the Tang dynasty. So which one do you choose? Okay. Now this is a tricky one. The correct answer is Delta. And the reason why Delta is correct is, and this is again, as I said, it's a tricky question. So just bear with me here. The correct answer is Delta and not Bravo, because see, we understood that Tang, there was fluctuation in terms of textiles. The thing is, if you look at Tang and modern day, one currency that was used in both these times was coins. Do you agree with that? Coins were used both in Tang and modern dynasty. And there's also a point in the passage. Just let me get, yeah, exactly. If you look at this line, it says the values of different textiles were also more stable than the fluctuating values of coins. So again, it also talks about the fluctuating value of coins in the Tang dynasty, right? And coins were common between Tang and modern system. So that's why we can draw a loose inference. And again, I'm saying a loose or a weak inference, that because coins were used in modern time as well, they also fluctuated. And that's why the answer is not Bravo and it's Delta. Okay, I know this will be difficult to digest, but remember, this is one of those rare questions in CAT, okay, where the information was not clear in the passage. But it's a very loose inference that you have to draw. Because coins were used in both and coins fluctuated in Tang, we can say that coins fluctuated in modern as well. Okay, see, ultimately how you solve these questions is you are left with B and D. You just have to choose the best option. In case of D, there is no doubt at all. Okay, transformation was only spoken about with the context of modern system. There was no transformation in Tang. So there is no doubt in D, but there is some bit on doubt in B because of coins. So that's why we end up choosing D. Okay, all right. So let's move on. Spend some time, folks, when you watch the recording and think about this. Okay, it's quite tricky. I admit to that. Let's go to question 3. When discussing textiles as currency in the Tang period, the author uses the word steady and stable to indicate all of the following except. Again, another except. Okay, so the author definitely mentions steady and stable with reference to textiles as a currency. Go to the paragraph and look at that in the link and choose an option keeping except in mind. Okay. So 3 options will be connected to steady and stable. 1 option will not be connected. You have to choose that particular option. Okay, so I'm seeing answers again. I see 2 options. Good. The fact that you're able to zero down on 2 options is a good sign, folks, right? In this stage of the preparation, your answers are quite sort of, you seem to be on the right track, which is a good thing. Okay, so maintain that. People are choosing Charlie and Delta. Okay, again, a little close. Let's try to understand that. Okay, steady and stable, there's a particular paragraph that talks about that. You should know that. Clearly there's a paragraph that talks about steady and stable. Let's look at that. Okay, so we are discussing textiles, and with reference to textiles, the word steady and stable was used. We have to choose the option which is not connected to steady and stable. Okay, let's look at that. Yes, this is where it talks about it. Just give me 1 second. Okay, this is the paragraph that it talks about textiles with reference to steady and stable. Just give me 1 second. Okay, you have stable here and you have steady here. Okay, so let's read this paragraph. So textiles had some advantages over coins, which we figured. Textile production was widespread and there were fewer problems with supply. So again, we took that note also, right? So textiles advantages, supply was an advantage. Okay. Then it said that it was steady and stable. Now, why was it steady and stable? For large transactions, textiles weighed less than coins. Okay. Furthermore, the dimensions of a bolt of silk held remarkably steady from the 3rd to the 10th century. So a bolt of silk was used as a currency. Bolt is a measurement. The dimension of that bolt remained steady. So it helped in currency because the dimension remains steady. So dimension is connected to measurement. So it's talking about steady measurement, right? The values of different textiles were also more stable than the fluctuating values of coins. So it talks about steady dimensions, okay, or steady measurements. And it also talks about, and it also talks about stable values. So steady dimensions, stable values. Let's look at the option now, question now. Right. Now we have reliable measurements. Absolutely, it spoke about steady dimensions. So this was a point that was mentioned with reference to steady and stable. We are choosing except, so this can't be your answer. Okay. Was a reliable supply as well? It does talk about that, right? You have textiles. It compares it with coins and says that textiles didn't have a supply problem. So the supply was steady and stable, but coins had that issue. So reliable supply is also gone. We're looking for except. Now we're left with these two. Okay, there is quality and there is transportation. Now transportation is something that is mentioned in the passage, but transportation is mentioned with reference to coins. In the next paragraph, it said that, coins were difficult to transport, or that they were expensive to transport. That's why they limited it to local area. But that was in reference to coins. We have to stick to, for this question, we have to stick to textiles and steady and stable. So we have to be within the context of textiles. Transportation was not mentioned in the context of textiles anywhere. Okay, so this is a possible answer. Now between Charlie and Delta, which is close, which is a better answer? Transportation has not been mentioned for textiles at all. Okay, but quality, you can connect it with value. See, think about it. It says that the value was stable. Sorry. It says that the value was stable, right? For textiles, you can connect value with quality. Where does quality come from? Quality comes from the value of the currency. If the value is high, the quality is high, right? So that's why what they're doing is they've connected this value aspect with quality. That's why it is mentioned with reference to steady and stable. So that's why we are choosing D, which is the correct answer. Quality is being connected to value. Transportation was not mentioned at all for the in the context of textiles. Okay, so we're choosing that. All good? All right, let's go to question 4. During the time period, which one of the following would not be an economically sound decision for a small purchase in the local market that is worth 1/8 of a bolt of cloth? Please understand this question properly. Which of the following would not be an economically sound decision? So, economically sound decision, that means it wasn't a great decision money-wise, is what they're saying. For a small purchase in the local market that is worth 1/8 of a bolt of cloth. Okay, think about your answer and then we'll quickly discuss that. Okay, so I'm getting a lot of alphas for this particular question. Any other option, folks, apart from alpha? Great. So alpha seems to be the unanimous answer. In this case, let's look at this. Okay. So economically sound decision for a small purchase. Okay. Remember, there was something about small purchase and large purchase, right? Coins were better suited for small purchase. Textiles was better suited for large purchases. Remember that point. Small purchase in the local market that is worth 1/8 of a bolt of cloth. Okay. So you're purchasing something which is worth only 1/8 of a bolt of cloth. Okay, so let's choose an option which will tell us that this is not an economically sound decision. Let's look at alpha, which you've chosen. Cutting 1/8 of the fabric from a new bolt to pay the amount. So there is a bolt, okay, it has a certain dimension which was mentioned. You're cutting the bolt of fabric to 1/8 to pay that amount. You're choosing this as a decision that is not economically sound. You're absolutely right. And the reason for that is, if you look at the passage, it says, let me just clear the notes. Yeah. It says coins, on the other hand, were suited for smaller transactions and possibly, given the cost of transported coins, for a more local usage. Grain, because it rotted easily, was not used nearly as much as coins and textiles. Sorry, this is not the point. Hold on. Just 1 second. Yes, it's here. Sorry about that. Okay. Where is that sentence? Yeah, there you go. Furthermore, a full bolt had a particular value, a full bolt of fabric. If customers cut textiles into smaller pieces to buy or sell something worth less than a full bolt, that too greatly lessened the value of textiles. So if you have a full bolt and you're cutting 1/8 of that bolt, right? So you're cutting 1/8 of the fabric, and what it says is that once you cut the fabric or the textile, it greatly lessens the value of the textile. So 1/8 of the bolt, the value will lessen, and that's why it's not an economically sound decision. So you guys are absolutely right. That is the correct answer. Okay, the rest of them are either economically sound decisions or not related. So A is the correct answer. Okay, let's look at this passage. All right, again, folks, this is also a passage which is, I would say it's not very difficult. Okay, it was also something like easy to medium passage, but yeah, there are some questions which are a little tricky. I would say the content is a little more complex than coins. So that's why you'll see that the questions are a little less easier than coins. But again, if you look at the overall difficulty of this passage, it was somewhere between easy to medium. Okay, all right. So yeah, just open the link, go to that particular passage, and let's start discussing it. I'll give you about a few seconds, and then we'll start talking about it. All right, folks, let's get started. So we'll read the passage, and then we'll solve the questions together. Okay. Now, just again, we'll take notes. We'll read it with a lot of interest, curiosity, and energy, and just focus on punctuations a little bit. Okay. So when there's a comma, pause your reading a little bit. When there's a full stop, pause more. Colon, semicolon, keep those things in mind. These are basic things that just help you in comprehension. Okay, don't let constructions throw you off. And if there's a construction that you don't understand, you can ask me at the end. Okay, all right. Again, don't ignore the title. Okay, it's just a placeholder. Vocabulary used in speech or writing organizes itself in 7 parts of speech. Okay, so vocabulary organizes itself in 7 parts of speech. 8 if you count interjections such as oh, gosh, and some word which says fudge the boy. I don't even know how to pronounce it. Let's ignore that. Okay, you don't have to understand everything. It's in brackets anyway. It's additional information. Okay, so vocabulary used in speech or writing organizes itself in 7 parts of speech. Communication composed of these parts of speech must be organized by rules of grammar, upon which we agree. When these rules break down, confusion and misunderstanding result. Bad grammar produces bad sentences. My favorite example from Strunk and White is this one. As a mother of 5 with another one on the way, my ironing board is always up. Okay. Now, what is the main idea of this paragraph? Now, there will be some parts in this paragraph which you will not understand. As I said, if you can get the main idea of the paragraph, you don't have to understand each and every word and sentence. Like, for instance, if you're confused by this is anyway like a crap word, just made up word. Don't worry about it. Now, there is a joke at the end. This is sort of a joke. If you don't understand the joke, now don't spend like 5 minutes understanding the joke. It's not important. If there is a question, we'll come back to it. Just understand the main part of the paragraph. What is it saying? See, it starts by talking about vocab, then it goes to communication, then it goes to grammar. If you understand, there are 2 main points here. It talks about communication. There are 2 parts to it. There is vocab and there is grammar. Okay, it says that. And then there's a major chunk of the paragraph talks about the importance of grammar. So it does start with vocabulary. It goes to communication. But if you look at this whole part talks about grammar. The importance of grammar. It says bad grammar produces bad sentences. Confusion and misunderstanding result when these rules break down. And then it gives you a joke. Not important to understand the joke. All right. Okay. I can explain the joke later on if you want. But yeah, it talks about the importance of grammar. And it starts talking about vocabulary as well. But grammar is sort of like the main point in the paragraph. Okay, let's move on. Nouns and verbs are the 2 indispensable parts of writing. Okay, again, it's elaborating on grammar. Nouns and verbs are part of grammar. Without one of each, no group of words can be a sentence. Since a sentence is by definition a group of words containing a subject, noun, and a predicate, verb. Okay, and then there is a semicolon. So semicolon is a pause. So let's stop there. Okay, I'll explain to you what a semicolon does. So it says nouns and verbs are 2 indispensable parts of writing. Indispensable means something that you can't avoid. It's a very critical part of writing. You can't ignore that. So when something is indispensable, you can't ignore it. Okay, so what it's saying is nouns and verbs are 2 critical parts of writing that you can't ignore. So if you want to write, you will have to understand nouns and verbs. That's what indispensable means. Okay, without one of each, no group of words can be a sentence, since a sentence is by definition subject and predicate, which is noun and verb. Okay, all right. These strings of words begin with a capital letter, end with a period, and combine to make a complete thought which starts in the writer's head and then leaps to the readers. So what's the main idea? It's talking about, now first it spoke about importance of grammar. They're becoming specific now, and they're talking about importance of nouns and verbs in grammar. So when it says that they're indispensable part of writing, to form a sentence, you need a noun and a verb. Okay, that's what it is. Now quickly, see folks, semicolon, you have to pause there, but it's different from a full stop. So typically when authors use semicolon, right, what they're doing here is, if you look at semicolon will combine two independent sentences. Okay, so you have this and you have this. A semicolon combines two independent sentences. But now the question is, why aren't they using a full stop? They're combining it because these two sentences are very closely related to each other. So semicolon combines two independent sentences. Yes, they are independent, but they are very closely related. So to signify the relation, they use a semicolon. Okay, so here how are they related? See, and again, if you read this sentence like in one shot, you will get confused. It's a very long sentence. So break it up. So it talks about, since the sentence is by definition a group of words, right? These strings of words. So when they say these strings of words, they're talking about the sentence. That's how it's connected. So you have a group of words containing a subject and predicate. These strings of words. So the group of words containing subject and predicate, the string refers to that. Okay, so they say that these group of words begin with a capital letter, end with a period, and have a complete thought. So they're just basically talking about how a sentence is constructed. But the main idea is importance of nouns and verbs. All right, so don't let the semicolon throw you off. Let's move on. Must you write complete sentences each time, every time? Is a question that the author is asking you. Perish the thought. So he's telling you perish the thought. Perish means get rid of the thought. Destroy it. That's what perish means, right? So destroy the thought is what the author is telling you. That means you don't need to write complete sentences each time, every time. Let's look at that. If your work consists only of fragments and floating clauses, the grammar police aren't going to come and take you away, right? So it's basically telling you that it's not important to write complete sentences each time, every time, right? And it gives you a funny sort of like word here. It's saying that even if you make a mistake, even if you write an incomplete sentence, the grammar police is not going to come and take you away. Right? So it's not important to write complete sentences each time, every time. That's what the author is saying here. Okay, let's read further. Even William Strunk, now Strunk, remember, was mentioned in the beginning. Even William Strunk, that Mussolini of rhetoric, recognized the delicious pliability of language. Okay, it is an old observation, he writes, that the best writers sometimes disregard the rules of rhetoric. Okay, interesting. Now this is a little bit complicated. Now what is he trying to say here? We already know that he says that it's not important to write complete sentences each time, every time. We know that. He elaborates on that. So he says that William Strunk, who is a Mussolini of rhetoric. So there is rhetoric, which is a word that you might not have, that you might not know, and pliability is also a word that is not very common. So it's a little difficult to understand this sentence if you don't know the meaning of these words. Okay, so let's try to understand what rhetoric means. See, rhetoric, by the way, it's not a very, very rare word, so you should definitely know what rhetoric is. Rhetoric is persuasive and forceful language. Language which is very persuasive and very forceful. That is rhetoric. Okay, so he's saying William Strunk, the Mussolini of rhetoric. That means William Strunk was known for his rhetoric, was known for his forceful and persuasive language. And pliability means flexibility. If something is pliable, it's flexible. Okay, so now if you've understood the meaning, it says the Mussolini of rhetoric, he was famous for forceful and persuasive language. He also recognized the flexibility of language. So although he was very good with language, he was known to write persuasive and forceful language, he recognized that the language is flexible. Okay, and then he says it's an old observation. So basically this is William Strunk's quote, that the best writers sometimes disregard the rules of rhetoric. So what it's saying is that even the best writers disregard the rules of the rhetoric of language. And what are the rules of language? Grammar are the rules of language. Okay, so even the best writers sometimes disregard those rules, which kind of connects to the previous thought. The previous thought said it's not important to write complete sentences each time, every time. That means you can ignore the rules. Then it says that even William Strunk, who was great at language, you said that sometimes best writers disregard the rules of rhetoric or rules of grammar. Okay, right. Yet he goes on to add this thought, which I urge you to consider. unless he's certain of doing well, the writer will probably do best to follow the rules. Interesting. So the paragraph till now is talking about that, it's okay. Sometimes you can disregard the rules of grammar. That's what the paragraph says till this part. Okay, that it's okay to disregard the rules of grammar sometimes, right? Or you don't have to follow the rules of grammar strictly every time. So we can say that, okay to disregard grammar rules sometimes. All right, that's the idea till that part. But then he says, William Strunk, again the quote of William Strunk, unless he's certain of doing well, meaning a writer, unless a writer is certain of doing well, the writer will probably do best to follow the rules. So what they're saying is that it's okay to disregard grammar rules sometimes. But if you're a writer who's disregarding grammar rules, be certain of doing well. So there is a condition, right? It's okay to disregard rules, but if you're disregarding rules, make sure that you are confident of what you're writing. Okay, and only then disregard the rules. If you're not confident about what you're writing, then it's best to follow the rules. So they're putting a condition here. It's a conditional statement that you can disregard the rules provided you know what you're doing. Okay, interesting. Let's see if it elaborates on that, and it does. The telling clause here is unless he's certain of doing well. Telling clause basically means the important clause. So the important part for you to consider is this part, unless he's certain of doing well. What does this mean? If you don't have a rudimentary grasp of how the parts of speech translate into coherent sentences, how can you be certain that you're doing well? Rudimentary means basic. Okay, so if you don't have a basic grasp of how the parts of speech translate, how can you be certain that you're doing well? How will you know if you're doing ill for that matter? The answer, of course, is that you can't, you won't. It's a little bit of a complex sentence. So what it's saying is, if you're a writer, okay, if you're doing well, if you're certain that you're doing well, you can disregard the rules. But how will you know that you're doing well or not? As a writer, you will know whether you're writing well or not only if you have a basic grasp of grammar. Okay, let's take an analogy. Let's say if you're cooking, okay, you're cooking a dish, right? How would you know whether the dish is going properly? So when you're cooking, how do you know whether you're cooking it properly or not? You need to know the basics of cooking. Okay, if you don't know the basics of cooking, you will not be able to judge while cooking whether a dish is going in the right direction or not. So for instance, if you're somebody who's cooking, right, and you're interested in cooking, you add the masalas, you add the spices, right? The spices have to cook a little bit before you go to the next step. And how we determine that is by the smell. So the smell is raw, you know that the spices are not cooked, you will wait. But if the smell is sort of like not raw, you know that you can move to the next step. So this is a basic of cooking. If you know these basics, you will know whether it's going well or not. If you don't know the basics, you will be blind. You will have no idea whether it's going well or not well, and it will be left to chance whether the dish works or not. Okay, so what they're trying to say is that if the writer is doing well, he can disregard the rules, but he will only know whether he's doing well if he knows the basics of grammar. Okay, so it's important to know the basics of grammar. That is the main idea of this paragraph. Okay, let's read the remaining one. One who does grasp the rudiments of grammar, rudiments is basics, finds a comforting simplicity at its heart where there need be only nouns, the words that name, and verbs, the words that act. So the main idea here is that the basics of grammar are important. It's important to know the basics of grammar. That's the main idea. Okay, and in the last sentence it says that if you understand the basics, you'll find them simple, because it's, after all, it's about nouns and verbs, right? The basic building blocks of grammar. That's the main idea of this paragraph. Okay, it's a little complex, you'll have to spend some time, but of course if you're not clear, I will come back to it. But the main idea is basics of grammar are important. So look at the flow, right? Previous paragraph he said that, okay, it's okay to disregard grammar rules. But then he says, be certain of what you're doing and then disregard. And how will you be certain? By knowing the basics. Okay, so that's the main point here, that the basics of grammar are important. Okay, let's move on. Take any noun, put it with any verb, and you have a sentence. Okay, again, it's talking about nouns and verbs, right? At the basic building blocks of grammar. So take a noun, take a verb, and you have a sentence. It never fails. Rocks explode, Jane transmits, mountains float. These are all perfect sentences. It's true. These are sentences, two-word sentences, but this is a sentence. There's a noun and a verb. Many such thoughts make little rational sense, but even the stranger ones, like plums defy, have a kind of poetic weight that's nice. Okay, so what it's saying is that the basics of grammar is very simple. You take a noun, take a verb, combine it into a sentence, and it makes sense. Sometimes it might not make sense, but even the stranger ones have some poetic words, so you can use that in poetry, if nothing else. The simplicity of noun-verb construction is useful. Okay, at the very least, it can provide a safety net for your writing. Okay, so again, the simplicity of noun and verb in grammar. Strunk and White caution against too many simple sentences in a row. But simple sentences provide a path you can follow when you fear getting lost in the tangles of rhetoric. All those restrictive and non-restrictive clauses, those modifying phrases, those appositives, and the compound complex sentences. Now look at this. See, this is all, even if you don't understand in the first go. Folks, it's right. You don't have to understand each and every word. Just understand the main point. Okay? What they're saying is that noun and verb, they were talking about basics of grammar. Now they're talking about noun and verb. This is important to understand. And once you understand this, you can form simple sentences. So it's important to understand nouns and verbs, the basics of grammar. It's an extension of the thought in the previous paragraph. Okay. So if you know how to form a simple sentence, that can help you when you are getting confused. So as a writer, if you get confused with sentences or you don't know how to express your thoughts, just use simple sentences is what they're saying. But they also caution against using too many simple sentences in a row. So don't use too many simple sentences, but yes, simple sentences can help you when you're confused as a writer. Okay. If you start to freak out at the sight of such unmapped territory, unmapped by you, just remind yourself that rocks explode, Jane transmits, mountains float, and plums defy. Grammar is the pole you grab to get your thoughts up on their feet and walking. Okay, so it's saying that grammar is simple. Okay, main idea of the paragraph is you have simple grammar rules. Okay, connected to noun and verbs that you should know. And these simple grammar rules will really help you to express your thoughts. Okay, the last sentence is important, right? Grammar is the pole you grab to get your thoughts up on their feet and walking. So simple grammar rules for expressing your thoughts is what it's saying. Okay. All right. Now, if you look at the central idea, so you've looked at the paragraphs. What is the main idea of the passage? See, it starts by talking about vocabulary, but the focus of the passage is clearly on rules of grammar, right? So what it's saying is the main idea is that it's important to know the basics of grammar. That's what the main idea is. You don't need to be a grammar expert, okay? But you need to know the basics of grammar, and grammar helps you to express thoughts. And it's simple, is what the passage is saying. Okay, so that's the main idea. Okay, so it looks like it's clear. Let's move to questions quickly, guys. Which one of the following quotes best captures the main concern of the passage? Okay, now this is similar to the main idea. Main concern, main idea, quite similar. Okay. Now, if you remember, I told you last time that whenever you're looking at a main idea question, you have to look at the passage as a whole. Okay, don't focus on specific parts, focus on the main idea. Okay, let me know the answer and then we'll discuss it. Okay, all right, so I'm getting some deltas, all right, and I'm getting Bravo as well. Okay, let's have more answers. Okay, there is an alpha as well, alphas and deltas. Okay, let's look at it. Which one of the following quotes best captures the main concern of the passage? Now, look at the passage holistically, please. Don't focus on specific aspects. You have to understand the passage as a whole to answer this question. It's very similar to main idea. Okay. Now, we discussed the main idea of the passage. What was the main idea? That basic rules of grammar are important, right? It's important to express your thoughts. You need to know the basic rules of grammar. If you don't know the basic rules, then there can be a lot of confusion. Right? That's the main idea. Okay. Now let's look at it. Let's look at alpha. Nouns and verbs are the two indispensable parts of writing. Without one of each, no group of words can be a sentence. Okay, see, this is definitely a thought that is mentioned in the passage. They do talk about the importance of knowing nouns and verbs when they're talking about basics of grammar. Okay, but again, look at the passage holistically. What does the passage talk about holistically? It talks about grammar, isn't it? It talks about basic grammar rules. And then grammar ka part is nouns and verbs. Okay, so it talks about basic grammar rules, and it says it's important to know nouns and verbs. So yes, alpha is a thought, is a part that is mentioned in the passage. All of them are quotes from the passage, but this is too specific for a question like main concern. Main concern, you have to go broader. You have to look at it holistically. So that's why this is too specific. Okay, let's hold on to it. So we'll have to look for a more general option for this question, but yes, this can be correct. Okay, Strunk and White caution against too many simple sentences in a row, but simple sentences provide a path you can follow when you fear getting lost in tangles of rhetoric. This is also a part that is mentioned. They say that use simple sentences that use nouns and verbs, know the basic rules of grammar. Okay, and you can use simple sentences when you're getting confused as a writer in tangles of rhetoric. Okay, this is an exact quote from the passage, but again, this is too specific, folks. The main idea is grammar. Okay, first it was nouns and verbs. Here it is talking about simple sentences. This is also connected to grammar. Simple sentences in what form? Simple sentences using nouns and verbs correctly. So following basic rules of grammar. Again, this comes under the umbrella of grammar. It's a it's quite specific. Okay, let's look at Charlie. The telling clause here is unless he's certain of doing well. This is also a very specific part of the passage where he says the writer can disregard rules if he knows he's doing well. Again, too specific for this question. We're looking at main concern. Delta says bad grammar produces bad sentences. Now, this is something that connects to your main idea, which is about following basic grammar rules. If you don't follow them, it will result into confusion. Okay, for these kind of questions, you have to look for a broader option, and this broader option connected to the main concern, and this does the job amazingly well. Alpha and Bravo are too specific. Charlie is also very specific. Delta is broad and it connects to the main concern. So that's why Delta is the correct answer. Sorry. All right, let's do question 2. Which one of the following statements, if false, could be seen as supporting the arguments in the passage? Now, this question is a tricky one. Okay, so be careful with this question. Please understand the question very well. Okay, and let me explain to you the question, folks, and then you can attempt it. That will be easier. Which one of the following statements, if false, could be seen as supporting the arguments in the passage? It's very important to understand what this means. Don't get confused. The options are given to you. If the options are false, okay, so there are two conditions for you to choose the right answer. The right answer will be false and it will support. So right option will be false and it will support the argument in the passage. So that's one way of looking at it. Or you can flip this and that will become easier for you to figure it out. False opposite is true, right? And the opposite of support is does not support. Okay, so either you can look at it that way. Okay, you make sure that it's false and support, or flip it and say true and does not support. This is easier. I'll tell you why. See, if you have to, these options are given to you. If you have to convert them into false, you'll have to convert each option to opposite. Currently, these options are given to you. So these options are considered true. If you have to make them false, you will have to go for the opposite version of each option and then make sure it supports. It becomes quite confusing. So the easier part would be take the options as true and choose an option which is true and does not support. So if you're considering them as true, you don't have to change them to opposite. They are true right now. Just choose an option which does not support. So automatically it will answer that question. Okay, so there are two ways of going about it. One, you take the opposite of each option and sees if it supports. That's difficult. or you take the options as it is, as true, and look for an option that does not support the argument. Okay, all right, go for it. Great. Okay, so I'm getting a lot of, I've only gotten bravos till now. Okay, so looks like there is unanimity in this question, but if you have any other option, folks, please feel free to mention that. Don't hesitate. We don't know yet whether bravo is the correct answer or not. Okay, so any other options, any takers for alpha, Charlie, delta? Okay, so all of you are going for bravo. Let's see if that's the correct answer. You're absolutely right. Okay, well done on this question. I'm very, very happy that you folks were able to get bravo. This is a tricky question, folks. Okay, some of you got A, no problem. We'll discuss that. This is a very tricky question, so congratulations on getting it right. Believe me, it's not an easy question. It uses, this is a typical question that uses critical reasoning as well, right? You have to use your analytical skills. So I'm very happy that you got it right. Let's now try to understand it. So see, one element of questions is, of course, you got it right, great. But you also have to get it right for the right reason. Remember that. Sometimes we choose an option based on a reasoning in our head which is not correct. Now that's risky. By chance it worked here, but it might not work for other questions. So yes, it's important to get an option right, but it's also important to get it right for the right reasons. Okay, especially when you're preparing. So remember that. Let's try to understand it. Okay, I'm going to clear these notes and then I will again sort of note it down. So as I said, was false and support. It's difficult to do this, so go for the opposite, which is true and do not support. Okay, in this case you don't need to go for the opposite meaning of the options. You can take the options as it is. Okay, let's see. Alpha, an understanding of grammar helps a writer decide if she or he is writing well or not. Okay, so basically we have to look for an option. The correct option will be true and it will not support. Remember that. That will be the correct option. Okay. Now all of them are true. An understanding of grammar helps a writer decide if she or he is writing well or not. This is correct for the passage, right? This supports the passage, right? The author says that you need to have an understanding as a writer. Remember the cooking analogy that I gave you? It was in connection to that. You need to understand grammar, basics grammar, to know whether you're writing well or not. Okay, so this is true, yes, but it supports what is mentioned in the passage. Remember, we're looking for something which is true and does not support. So this is not our answer. Okay, we'll come back to bravo, which is the correct answer. Let's look at Charlie. It has been observed that writers sometimes disregard the rules of rhetoric. This is true. Remember, Strunk made that quote that writers can sometimes disregard the rules of writers, even the best writers. This is true and this supports. But we are looking for true and does not support. So this is not the right answer. Regarding grammar, women writers tend to be more attentive to method and accuracy. Now it's important to understand why you ruled this out. Remember, this is unrelated. There is no mention of women and men writers anywhere in the passage. They have thrown this option just to confuse you. This is unrelated. Now remember, if there is an unrelated point, the question of supporting or does not supporting does not arise. It's an unrelated point. For something to support or do not support, it has to be a related point. Just because it's an unrelated point, you can quickly rule it out because it will not do anything to the passage. It's completely unrelated. It's just there to confuse you, right? So by elimination also, you can come to bravo. Now just understand bravo. It's a little tricky the way that option is mentioned. Now, perish the thought is similar to what is mentioned in the passage, but here it's used in a different construction. Let's try to understand it. Let's break it up. What does it say? Complete sentences necessarily need nouns and verbs. Okay, complete sentences necessarily need nouns and verbs. The option is saying perish the thought. When you're perishing something, that means you have to go for the opposite. It's a little tricky, bear with me here. Complete sentences necessarily need nouns and verbs. Perish that thought, take the opposite of that. So the complete sentence does not necessarily need nouns and verbs. That's what the option is saying. Do you get it? Because of perish the thought, you have to take the opposite meaning. Complete sentences do not necessarily need nouns and verbs. Okay, so that's what you have to consider as true. Does this support the passage? It does not support the passage because the passage says that for complete sentences, you need nouns and verbs. because nouns and verbs are indispensable. Remember? So indispensable means that they are critical. Okay, so this is true and do not support. The true version of this is does not support the passage, therefore this is the correct answer. Okay, so very tricky question. First you have to remember this part, which makes it easier, and then for this option you'll have to use it. Because of perish the thought, it becomes a little unclear. Okay, and this is not correct just because it mentions perish the thought. That's not the reason. The reason is you have to analyze it and then figure it out. Okay, let's move on. If there's time at the end, I can focus on that. Question 3. All of the following statements can be inferred from the passage except that. Now there is except again. Inferred is basically understanding that you can draw from the passage. We've seen an example already. Now 3 statements you can infer, 1 statement you will not be able to infer. So you have to choose the statement that you can't infer because of except. So 3 statements will infer and 1 do not infer, and this will be your correct option. Okay, tell me the right answer. You folks are saying bravo. Okay, there is a Charlie as well. So there are a lot of bravos, some Charlies as well. Great, let's discuss it. So a lot of bravos, some Charlies. Let's understand it. So we have to pick an option which you can't infer from the passage. That should be clear by now. Okay, all right. I'm going to focus on Bravo and Charlie because that's where the confusion is. Let me know if you want me to discuss other things. Okay, what does Charlie say? Sentences do not always have to be complete. Can you infer this from the passage? That sentences do not always have to be complete. Okay, let's look at the passage. Must you write complete sentences each time, every time? Perish the thought. If your work consists only of fragments and floating clauses, the grammar police aren't going to come and take you away. So is it compulsory to write complete sentences each time, every time? No. Okay, that's what the passage says. So sentences do not always have to be complete. You can infer this from the passage. It clearly says that it's not always compulsory to have complete sentences. You can have incomplete sentences as well. And if you do that, the grammar police is not going to come and take you away, right? So you can infer this. Okay. Now let's look at B. So this is not the correct answer. The primary purpose of grammar is to ensure that sentences remain simple. What is the primary purpose of grammar? Look at the passage, look at the main idea. Basic grammar rules are important. Why are they important? Because if you don't follow grammar rules, it will lead to confusion. It will create chaos, right? Bad grammar, bad sentences, or what was that quote? From bad grammar produces bad sentences and it creates confusion. So the primary purpose of grammar is to ensure that there is no confusion, to ensure that there is clarity. The primary purpose of grammar is not to ensure that sentences remain simple, right? That is not the primary purpose. The primary purpose of grammar is to ensure that there is no confusion between the author and the reader. That is the primary purpose. So we can't infer this, and this is your correct answer. Okay. All right. Now, just in the interest of time, we're running out of time, so I won't be able to sort of explain the other options, but remember this is a common word, and maybe in the next session I can talk about it, but please do take some time out to understand what a metaphor is. Okay, metaphor is a common word that comes in CAT passages somewhere, so you need to understand what metaphor is. Okay, it's a simple concept, don't complicate it. It's a part of, you should understand what literally and figuratively means. Okay, so take this as homework. Okay, understand what literally means, understand what figuratively means first. And figuratively is connected to metaphors. So metaphors are always figurative. So understand this and you will understand what a metaphor is. It's important because it comes in quite a few times. We've seen that coming in CAT. Okay, but the option here is bravo. Let's move on. Okay, take any noun, put it with any verb, and you have a sentence. It never fails. Rocks transport, explode, Jane transmit, mountains float. Now this is an actual sentence from the passage. None of the following statements can be seen as similar except. Okay, this is an example, folks, of an extrapolation question. So what it's asking you to do is, it's asking you to read this sentence, take any noun till mountains float, understand the relationship in that sentence, and choose one of the options that has a similar relationship. Okay, so you have to match the relationship of this statement with the options, right? And it says none of the following statements can be seen as similar except. Okay, so what this basically means is, and again, see, you have none and you have except. This is how they confuse you. So basically what it means is that there is only one option here which is similar, and three options are not similar. None of the following statements can be seen as similar except. So one option is similar, three options are not similar. You have to pick the option that is similar. Okay, right, go ahead, choose your answer and then let me know. Okay, so I'm seeing some D's, Delta and Bravo as well. Great, let's look at this, folks. So a lot of you are saying Delta and I'm seeing some Bravos as well. Okay, let's understand this. Now see, it says take any noun, put it with any verb and you have a sentence. So what it's saying is you have a noun plus verb equal to sentence, right? That's what the option is saying. And then it says it never fails. It gives you examples of that. Okay, now we have to look for an option which is similar. Three options will be not similar, one option will be similar. Okay, let's look at Bravo and Delta. Let's start with Bravo. Take an apple tree, plant it in a field and you have an orchard. Okay, so orchard is a collection of apple trees, right? Orchard is just like you have an orchard, which is an area which is full of multiple apple trees. So it's saying take an apple tree, plant it in a field and you have an orchard. So it's basically you have tree which is contained in an orchard. So you have orchard, okay, and then it's made up of different trees. That's what the relationship there is. Okay, as opposed to Delta, which says take any vegetable, put some spices in it and you have a dish. So vegetable plus spices equal to dish. Isn't this very similar to what it's in the question? Noun plus verb is equal to a sentence. So building blocks of a sentence are noun and verb. Building blocks of dish are vegetables and spices. It's very similar. Okay, so Delta is the correct answer. The reason why Bravo is not the answer is because an orchard is made up of multiple trees, right? You have an orchard and you have an apple tree. It's talking about two entities, but here you have veg plus spices equal to dish. So the equation is different. Also, another reason is Bravo is an exaggeration. One apple tree is not going to make an orchard. It's an exaggeration. You can't take one apple tree, plant it and expect to have an orchard. You need like many trees. So it's an exaggeration. And the sentence in the question is not an exaggeration. So two reasons why Bravo can't be the answer. Delta is a very similar relationship. Okay. And take some time, please, to understand none and except. This is what it is. Okay. Don't get confused. All right. Great. Let's look at the last question, folks. We have question number 5. Inferring from the passage, the author could be most supportive of which one of the following practices. Okay, so again, inference, you have to draw an understanding from the available information. The author could be most supportive if which one of the following practices. So there are 4 practices given to you. You have to choose the option which you think the author will be most supportive of. Most is very important. Okay, best possible option. In all CAT questions, you have to choose the best answer. So choose the option that you think the author will be most supportive of based on what is given in the passage. Okay, go for it. Okay, let's look at it. So a lot of you are choosing Delta. All right, let's understand this. Now let's look at Delta. The availability of language software that will standardize the rules of grammar as an aid to writers. See, understand the passage says that basic rules of grammar are important, right? That is the main idea of the passage, that basic rules of grammar are important for writers, because if the writer doesn't know the basic rules of grammar, it's going to produce bad sentences and confusion. That's the main idea. Now think about it. If you have a language software that standardizes the rules of grammar, it will help writers. And the author should be supportive of this because the author says basic rules are very important. Now here you have a software that makes this very easy for writers. It standardizes the rules of grammar. So automates it. It basically points out, oh, the sentence is wrong, noun and verb and all of that. Okay. So the author should be very supportive of this because it completely resonates with the author's opinion that basic rules of grammar are important. So Delta is the correct option. Okay. Now very quickly, Don't get confused with Bravo. It's a trap. It says the critique of standardized rules of punctuation and capitalization. Okay. Will the author be supportive of this? The author doesn't say that punctuation and capitalization is not required. The author just focuses on nouns and verbs and the basic rules of grammar. The author doesn't say that punctuation and capitalization should be ignored, okay, or is not important. He doesn't talk about that. He just sticks to basic rules of grammar. So that's why Bravo can't be the correct option. The author will not be supportive of this, but the author will be very supportive of a software that standardizes the rules of grammar. Okay. All right, folks. So that brings us to an end of this session. I hope you enjoyed it. Now, consider liking the video if you folks enjoyed the session. Otherwise, you always feel free to dislike as well. See, the only thing is, if you like it, YouTube, the way YouTube works is it shows this video to more and more students. So more and more students can hopefully get value out of it. So consider liking.